Yeah, Nick and I recently did a podcast on what was happening with the war in Iran and the impact of cost increases on the industry generally. And obviously, Nick from YourQS, being a quantity surveyor, is particularly well placed to talk about costs. And so he's kindly agreed to come in today to talk about that as well. So I think the presentation starts with Nick. So nope, I've broken it now. How do I click next? Is it spacebar? There we go. So yeah, I'm just gonna bring Nick up then, and he can talk you through this. Okay. Hey Nick, pass it on to you.
I'll just and then Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming along and listening. So yeah, everybody wants their pricing to be fast, accurate, and profitable. Big question is how. So yeah, as Avinka said, Kiren said, I'm Nick Clements, I'm a quantity surveyor, and today I'll cover a little bit about how, but also talk a bit about pricing and the like. So I'll talk a bit about the market uncertainty and what's going on, and give you a little bit of background and some of the things that we've picked up as we've been going along. I'll also touch on what is a good cost estimate, because that underpins everything you're doing in a business around trying to manage your prices. And then Kiren will cover a bit around how contracts deal with price movements of the different sorts of contracts. So to start off with, a little bit about us. So I call ourselves a technology-enabled quantity surveying service. So we work for builders and architects around the country, started the business in 2018. We've done about 4,000 projects since I started the business, and we work with 300 or 400 builders across the country. We're mostly residential, sort of roughly 50-50 renovations and new builds, but we also do a little bit of commercial, because a lot of the builders we work with get into commercial as well. And then we do little bits and pieces of other stuff, working with manufacturers, helping them understand product costs, that sort of thing. I wrote an article for EBOS at the beginning of the year, just sort of doing a bit of pontificating, and in hindsight, I might have been tempting fate, where I had a sort of reasonably positive view about what was going to happen for us in the building sector. If you look at exports, it's been pretty solid for the last couple of years, and I don't think we've really seen that flow through into the construction sector yet. So I was expecting that to start flowing through, and that's sort of what we're seeing. So with consents, we're running at about 6.5 new builds per 1,000 of population. If you look back at the GFC, that was around 4. The peak during COVID was around 9. So projections were reasonably solid on new builds. This is data that Creditworks collect from the building supplies merchants, so they get a really good view of what's actually going through the warehouses across the industry. And they were starting to see some increases in sales coming through. So the signs were supporting my theory that things were going to be looking better through the year. And then Mr. Trump decided to start bombing people, and all the wheels have fallen off. So what's happened is you've all experienced it. Fuel prices have really jumped. My sort of view from sort of looking at things now is inflation will take a one-off hit, but it's going to be different to what we saw in the COVID time, because with COVID we had two things. We had the supply issues around the whole supply chain getting mucked up, but then you also had governments pumping a lot of money in to try and stimulate demand. And so if you've got supply issues and stimulated demand, you're going to get inflation. This time we've got a supply issue and it's hit prices, but if anything, those price increases have suppressed demand, particularly in the sort of developing economies. And so we're not quite seeing the same supply demand pressures. So I think we'll see a one-off hit in price increases, so with the fuel and plastics and that kicking through, but I'm sort of reasonably hopeful it'll settle down to a bit of a new normal at a higher price level, and people are just going to have to get used to paying a bit more for fuel and paying a bit more for stuff. And as a result, sort of hoping that confidence will start coming back and people will get used to this uncertainty that we're in being the new normal for a while, until things do sort of settle down. But of course, there is a prediction, and predictions are terrible and chances are wrong. And if there's anything happens on the supply side, so if we actually start running out of fuel, then all bets are off as to what's going to happen. But that sort of based on what I'm seeing now, my view is that hopefully it'll start getting a bit better. Who knows? So looking at what we learned over COVID, so that's the sort of nearest thing we've got to sort of figure out how to deal with this time. So what we saw was a really rapid period of price increases over that time. But what to me was interesting was prices didn't come down. So even though we've had a pretty tough few years in the building sector over the last little while, it hasn't actually caused prices to drop down. So basically when prices go up, they stay up. We learned that fixed price contracts hurt. So I'm old enough to remember back when we used to have rampant inflation. I can remember the interest rate on my mortgage on my house was 23% when we bought our first house. And that was because this inflation was crazy. And it meant that everybody across every industry was used to dealing with price increases because they were pretty much monthly. And so contracts had it in. We had mechanisms for negotiating price increases. You had price indexes and the like. So everybody was used to dealing with it. When they got inflation under control in the sort of late 80s, mid 90s, all of that experience and knowledge and contractual stuff tended to go out. So a lot of contracts started dropping out, escalation clauses and the like. So having an escalation clause in your contract's vital. We did see them come back in with COVID. I've heard anecdotally that they've been started to get negotiated back out again. So anybody who's done that is probably regretting it about now. So lesson, don't let that happen again. We also learned a new term, fuel adjustment factors. So they came in with COVID and they were typically in the transport sector. So a lot of us, they weren't like an everyday thing. But what we're seeing now this time around is a lot of the supply chain applying fuel adjustment factors to their costs. The one good thing about it is that it's less likely to embed those price increases in to the prices. So if it's a normal price increase that's just come through, chances are if they know they can charge you $12 and they were charging $10 yesterday, the chance of them dropping it down to $10 again are pretty low. Whereas the fuel adjustment factor thing is supposed to be transparent and is supposed to respond to the fuel prices. So if that genuinely happens, it means that those increases should come back out again. And the upside of that is the Reserve Bank will also then see through this current peak and not respond with higher interest rates to try and suppress inflation. So fingers crossed. So what it means is that you should be tracking build costs, and to track build costs means you've got to have a system in place to be able to do it. So you've got to have some sort of job cost management system. That's got to start off with a sound estimate. If you don't have a decent estimate, it's pretty hard to argue your position. You know, if you're trying to say you've got an escalation clause and you're trying to say we based our price on this price here and it's now here, and you're trying to claim a difference, if you can't support those pieces of information, you're going to struggle with your claims. Something beeped at me. I'm just looking to see what. I can't see. So we'll carry on. So a sound estimate is accurate, detailed, and repeatable. But building's complicated. So if you look at this, I pulled this out of a database. So a typical project has 50 or 60 trades. So there's 50 or 60 different people providing price information into a project that we as QSs have got to estimate. You as builders have got to manage the whole thing. To group that up a little bit, these are the bigger blocks. So the sub trades are a big chunk of what the costs are into a project. Labour's then the next biggest chunk. Merchants is then the next biggest. Allowances, which is things like carpet and plumbing fixtures and that sort of stuff, where the client choice is the next biggest chunk. Oop, I've just hit some wrong button. Oh dear. Yeah. Not used to using the keyboard. So there's 3 steps to getting a good estimate. There's measuring, quantifying, and rates. So measuring is getting your base quantity, your areas, lengths, counts. Quantifying is turning those areas into a scheduler quantity, so labour, material, subcontractors and the like. And then rates is applying pricing information to those scheduler quantities. So we use technology for all of those parts of the process. So I'll talk through a little bit about sort of how that works. So measuring, so the traditional is a scale rule and highlighter. So measuring physically off the drawings, working out areas. So it would be the traditional approach. What's more common now is using some sort of 2D measuring tool, so measuring in PDFs and getting areas and lengths and counts and the like of that. What we do is we create a 3D model, so we use a 3D model to drive our measuring process. The reason why we like 3D is it's visual. You can immediately see whether you've got it there or not. The way our system works, if it's in the model, it's in the cost. So if you can't see it, it isn't there. But it also allows you to check things like raking walls. We use color coding to be able to tell the different wall types and the like. So it's much more visual. If you look at the quantification process, the industry standard would be a monster spreadsheet that somebody in the organization's developed who may or may not still be there, and people may or may not know how to use it. But you put those measures in and it generates a schedule of quantities out of it. The better way is to use some sort of software database system, so something like Costex or BuildExact or one of these measuring tools. They can link the 2D measurement to a recipe. The recipes then require somebody with skill and experience to know how to modify the recipe to make it work for that particular project that you're working on. So it's not super automated, it's still quite dependent on the skill and experience of the person doing the measuring. What we've done is developed what we call algorithms. So in behind each of those building elements, those 3D elements that we put into a model, we've done a whole lot of research into how you build them. So what's involved in building them, so the labor, the materials, the times, the different characteristics. We've built that up by doing a whole lot of research ourselves, talking to suppliers, talking to builders. And so what we're able to do is put all of our organizational knowledge into our software. So it means my guys, when they're doing an estimate, they're not having to work out how long does it take to fit a door handle. The system's got all of that built into it. Keeping up with pricing is a real challenge. There's 4,000 to 6,000 items in a typical house, and so to try and keep the prices correct on all of those is pretty challenging. So why don't we do square meter rates? Well, this picture shows why you don't use square meter rates. So this is about 1,000 houses, and we looked at across the bottom is the project value, but it could equally be the square meters of the house. And so you can pretty much pick any value or any square meter, and you can have a wide range of square meter rates that would apply. The reason why that is there's lots of things that affect the cost that don't affect the square meters. So if you tile the bathroom, the square meter rate goes up. If you put rigid air barrier on, the square meter rate goes up, but the square meters don't change. So if you're using square meter rates, good luck to you. What we do is we've got an account at Placemakers, and we've got it set up on a small medium builder discount. We download price lists for about 90,000 products across the country, so we've got different regions for it. And we map those products across to our items, and we try and keep up with all the changes. So they often, so even though we've got mapping set up, they often change new suppliers, so the product codes change. So that's a constant thing for us, keeping on top of it. We also have reverse engineered how the sub-trades price, and I'm sure any of you that have gone out and got pricing will realise that they're all over the place. So we've tried to come up with a methodology so that we're able to put a number together for each of the sub-trades. And then what we do is a lot of our builders will supply quotes through, so we keep an eye on what our numbers were coming up with versus the quotes to try and keep some sort of market feel. But it's, we always recommend that particularly if you're going to a fixed price, that you get pricing from your sub-trades, and we can feed that into our estimates. Labour, we get labour rates from each builder that we work with, so that's set to them. So what we do is we do a lot of concept estimating. So about half what we do would be concept versus details. So a lot of that is working with primarily architects and homeowners, helping them establish what the build cost is going to be to make sure that they can afford the dream that they've got. So hopefully filtering out or getting the project within budget before they're starting to talk to builders. Then we do a lot of pricing with builders, so basically helping them prepare their quotes for their clients, and that's working at sort of a detail level. We also do bank finance reports, so that's where the banks want an independent party involved to make sure that everything looks like it's going to stack up. And then often as part of that, we're also doing progress claims, so that's where we're working out what's being built and does it line up with what the invoice is at that point in time, so that whether it's a bank or whether it's a homeowner wanting to make sure when they're shelling out their cash that it actually lines up with what's going on, so they're not paying too far ahead or too far behind. One last thing is we've developed a service over the last year or so in response to the changes in the H1 system. So they used to be able to use something called schedule method, which was really easy for architects, just plonk in a bunch of numbers and it's job done. The calculation method requires you to do a calculation to work out what the insulation or what the thermal elements of the building need to be. And it's fairly complicated, it changes. So do you spend the money on the windows or the floor or the ceiling or the walls? And it changes depending on the size and shape of the building. So what we've done is built the calculation method calculator into our 3D model so we can work out whether it complies or not, but then we can also compare it against other alternatives. So what we're able to do is do a combination of the H1 calculation and costing at the same time, and then to work out sort of cost-effective ways of complying. We've done about 50 projects now, and we're typically showing around a $4,000 saving against where it's been done by an architect previously using free tools or Bunnings or the various free services around. We're typically able to pick up around a $4,000 saving by just using better alternatives of materials across it. So that's it for me. Kiren.
I'll check see if there's any questions for you, because I'm wondering what that.
Yeah.
Oh no, someone's trying to come in. Okay. There we go. Okay. Here we go. Hey, Mark. I'm sorry to say you missed all of Nick speaking, so now you're stuck with me. But yeah, it was really informative. So thanks, Nick. Yeah, he went through pricing,
Yeah,
but
that's great.
anyway, this is being recorded, so it'll be circulated, so you can have a look at Nick's talk afterwards. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about cost fluctuations and how that's dealt with in different forms of contracts, because that's what we're seeing a lot of now. And we're hearing a lot of requests about how it's dealt with in the contracts, how to manage it. And so that's why we decided to kind of hit this. So the certified builders contracts, and in theory, I should just be able to, hit the space bar and it should work, but it's not. I just don't know why I'm so incompetent with this. What am I doing wrong, guys? The space bar did work. Did you just hit the space bar, Nick? Okay. I mean, luckily I know what they say, so I can just talk about it. But there we go. Okay, cool. Okay, so in the certified builders contract, we've got proper cost fluctuation clauses. That's all right. And those clauses include a duty, so the builder has a duty to try and resist those cost fluctuations. So that doesn't mean that you can't increase your costs, but it means that you've got to try and keep those or fix those costs as much as you can. So basically what it says is that you've got to try and obtain fixed prices at the outset of the build. So for example, and this is for the fixed price contract, I should clarify. So in the fixed price plus contract, cost fluctuations are governed by this. And so at the outset, you should try and get fixed costs from your subcontractors, from your suppliers, and that kind of thing. But obviously, you can't always do that. Good luck trying to ask placemakers to, fix their costs or ITM if, costs are increasing. And so if you can't obtain those fixed costs, then you can pass on the cost increases. But I think, again, this is where it's quite important to kind of show, because if there is an argument about those cost fluctuations, it'll be good to be able to show that you tried to get that fixed price at the outset, or that you did get the fixed price at the outset, and that, they increased for whatever reason. So you need to be able to show that evidence that you did try to resist those cost price increases, and that you were unable to do so. So that's what the certified builders contracts say. Okay, the master builders contracts doesn't really have a clause specific for cost fluctuations. So they've got a general clause for adjustments to the contract price. So it's more, so that's, your variations, it's provisional sums, but it's also your cost fluctuations. So basically there's no separate process for them. So there's no duty to resist increases in prices. And it's basically just that you try to agree with the owner about what to do with the cost increases. And then if you can't, then the builder just passes on the actual one. So I think for residential builds, I would think that the fixed price certified contract is probably a bit more fair, because I think it strikes that balance of trying to get some certainty for the homeowner, but where that's not possible, those prices, get passed on. So I think it does. It goes a step further than the master build contracts, which are just try to agree. And agreeing is basically just, is the builder willing to take a cut, by not passing on that increase. But I think by trying to obtain those fixed prices at the outset for the fixed price contract, it protects both parties. So I think the builder tries to lock in those fixed prices so that they can offer a fixed price contract. And then if that's not possible, then there's no duty to agree either. You just pass it on. So I think it's probably a more commercial way. Yeah, please.
So the homeowner can't refuse the direction in that case?
In neither case. Yeah. So that's why. No, but that's why it's called, well, for both. So this one's got adjustments, but I think it's fixed price contract to the best that you can. But I think particularly, for example, during COVID times when, the cost of cedar went up, I can't actually remember, it was like, yeah, it was ridiculous. But yeah, and I think it's not really fair to expect, a business owner to absorb all of those costs. And so that's why, I suppose, to try and temper it as much as possible, we've got that duty to try and fix the costs at the outset, to try and keep it a fixed price to the best that you can. And then obviously there's, you can always commercially make a decision to absorb some of that cost if you want to. But if you can't, keep to that fixed price, then yes, you can pass them on. And with the master builders contracts, there isn't that duty to try and keep or obtain those fixed prices to begin with. And so if the cost increases, the cost just increases. And if you can't come to an agreement with the owner, then it's just a too bad situation. So yeah, no, that is correct. I should clarify, sorry, going back to the certified contracts, this is for the fixed price contracts. So the cost and markup ones are obviously different. That's based on an estimate rather than a fixed cost, and there isn't the same duty to try and obtain fixed costs for those because you are working on a cost plus basis. But obviously there are different duties surrounding estimates, and actually I do want to talk about that because builders, and it's in the code of ethics actually now as well, that builders have an obligation to obtain, like, to carefully calculate their estimates, so they can't just pluck a figure out of the air. So obviously, getting a QS, for example, would be a great way to make sure you've taken care. But yeah, you need to make sure that when you prepare that estimate, you've done it by actually considering all of the elements of the build. And then if the cost is increasing, then you've got to keep your clients updated as to those increased costs and why. So I think there are different considerations for both of them. So yeah, what I've talked about here is very much with the cost fluctuation clauses, is very much for the fixed price contract. But for the cost and markup contracts, it's more about you can actually pass on the actual cost regardless. It's just not a fixed price contract. But there is still that duty to prepare your estimate with care and to keep clients updated when that estimate is likely to be exceeded. So there are different considerations with the certified builders contracts, depending on which one you use. Okay, so then the NZS contracts, it's just got a formula. So Appendix A sets out a formula for calculating the cost fluctuations, and it's based on the actual costs and the current prices and indices. So formula inputs that are published, that are published online. So yeah, and that has to be submitted to the engineer or the principal, depending on which form of the New Zealand Standards contract you're using, for approval. So it's, I suppose it's an independent person certifying it, unless it's the principal, in which case it's just the owner certifying it. So in that case, yeah, it's either the engineer who technically works for the principal, or the principal who needs to approve that cost fluctuation before it goes through. They also need to be submitted on time, so there is a time frame. You can contract out of them. So there is the option in the New Zealand Standards contracts to just not include cost fluctuations at all. And obviously that places more of the risk on the builder, but that is an option that's available. And there is also the option to choose another method. So if you think there's another better way of calculating the cost fluctuations rather than the formula, then you can put that in as well. Yeah. And then, so I'm just honestly, it's just the 4 main contracts that we use in New Zealand. So this is the NZIA one. So yeah, it's similar to the NZS contracts, but it doesn't have that formula. So the payment claim has to include, so you have to submit payment claims, and the payment claim has to include the value of any cost fluctuations. So I guess there's that transparency of which part of it is the cost fluctuation, and you can contract out of including them, so similar to the NZS. And in this case, you would submit those cost fluctuations to the architect rather than the engineer or the principal to assess that. So yeah, so I think that's really all I wanted to say on yeah, it's all I wanted to say really on the contracts. So yeah, I just wanted to run through the 4 contracts, how they deal with increased costs and increased pricing, and that's basically what it is. So yeah, so I think Nick's done a little summary. So he said, which I actually didn't look at, I confess. So yeah, so I think key takeaways, I suppose, current market uncertainty. I think I tend to share Nick's somewhat optimistic view that it seems to have settled down, but you never want to speak too soon. And I did touch on briefly what a good cost estimate is. Obviously, if you really want to cover all your bases and prove that you took all due care, you probably would get a QS, but obviously for smaller jobs that's sometimes not feasible, but you do still need to take care of it and show that you've actually considered everything in coming up with your estimate. And and I think we've talked a little bit about how each of the main contracts deal with price movements. So yeah, do you guys or people online have any questions for either Nick or I about anything really, the contracts, or I think or or how the pricing works, or yeah, anything related or not related, that works too. So yeah, I'm looking at you, Dan.
One quick something.
Yeah.
I just noticed the other day, Paul, that you maybe you probably would see it. They with the VAT tax, that was probably 2 weeks ago. It was like, oh, we're putting it up because of diesel prices, and literally yesterday, reverse, putting it down,
Yeah.
because the diesel price went a week and a half later. Yesterday, got an email. Oh, sorry, it's back up against this stuff. So it was, so yes, I, from my view, anyway, it's like I said, working, but it seems to be like
Up and down.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And well, my point is like, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
Cost fluctuation stuff. Do you have to try and find some sort of medium ground?
Yeah,
You know?
I think yeah, again, it just comes down to which contract you're dealing with. So yeah, if it's the cost and markup, certified contract, then it just comes out to what it is and you pass that on, and let your client know if the cost has increased significantly, if it's ended up being at that high point, and let them know.
I understand volatility and overseas, but
yeah,
for us on the ground, it's like, oh, this week it's this price.
Or you could even let them know, because I think a bit of communication goes a long way. So you could even let your clients know, hey, at the moment.
I've also noticed that some sort of meeting here, there's quite a significant difference in the levels of VAT tax across the different merchants. Some are doing I've noticed IT, my deal, for example, number around 2% seems to be pretty stable around here. Then other ones are sort of like, and some of them are being quite high too, from what I'm seeing myself.
Well, I think at the outset of the job, so let's say you've got the fixed price certified contract and you've got that duty to try and obtain fixed prices where possible, then I guess you'd probably try to go for the more stable one at the outset. And obviously if things change throughout the project, it's out of your control, so it's not really something that you can control. But I think it is worth putting or passing that communication on to your clients so that they're aware that there's a risk there.
Personally, over the last few years, I don't know why it's bloody skips, rubber skips, for God's sake, anyway.
I think that's actually what set this whole thing off. Yeah.
I mean, old school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, the price of that's for the part of the jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
You get the bill for the skip and it's like, seems to average like $100 and when you go, well, what's going on, guys? It's we just based it on the last few jobs and stuff, but it's changed overall. So it wasn't actually a quote, it was just a rough estimate.
But I think that's where you could push back. So if the terms of the quote,
skip supplier, to the case, and you tell me what it is currently, because I'm not having to pay extra when the bill comes in.
Yeah. But I think, but some are. But I think. Yeah, but each quote that you get is also a little mini contract, and so if the terms, so if the terms of their quote say something like, we're entitled to increase costs depending on the market, then you're kind of stuck.
Of course, this
but
is on the phone.
Yeah.
There's a fuel adjustment factor around. You need to ensure that everybody's thinking about it. So the builder's thinking about it, and also they're communicating. So we can show it as it's like this money or something. So that the clients will be it's going to be this number in there that you've got to think about.
Yeah, I think like I was saying, I think communication does go a long way. Like if they've got a heads up that hey, this might be an issue.
It's like, oh no, that was a quote. Yeah, not estimates. No. If you look at my spreadsheet, I've put estimates in green, highlighted in green, put quote in red on different subtracts. So
good. Yeah.
Crystal clear. With this quote's valid to XYZ date, because that's what I'm fighting to. So come back 2 months later and go, oh, but
sorry, that quote's not valid anymore. It's gone up. Yeah.
It's good for 30 days.
Yeah.
For my subcontractor.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, and yeah, like I said, depends on the contract. You know, you might have the So if it's NZS, it would just depend on what the formula spits out, and then the engineer and principal approves it. So yeah, yeah, I'm sure there's more questions.
Building materials increases.
Yeah.
That's quite concerning.
There was a big task. It was like 2,000 products.
Right.
And I realised because we've been downloading price lists from placemakers since 2017, and I realised actually we had all of the data here. That's not built that out of the house.
Sweet. So that's actually your place, not just a normal market.
No.
Grabs your data.
Yeah.
So we've got a question from Mark online. So he said, did we cover off the updated version of Halo loss of deposit and our responsibility to make new clients aware of the structure? Well, Mark, I'm going to give you a little slap on the wrist because that was last month's presentation. So yeah, so Sean, yeah. So okay. But yeah, I was going to say, so maybe you mean something else because it sounds like Dan understands the relation to this. Okay, so does Paul. So I'm just missing it. Obviously, I'm not the builder, so I'm just dumb and I'm missing the point. But I was going to say, Sean talked about the updates generally, and I think that recording's on our website and on the certified tool shed now. So if you wanted to have a look, there's that. But if you guys wanted to explain, or if Mark, you wanted to explain what that meant related to this.
It's more the fact at the moment it's come to light and we've realised that if your client takes out the loss of deposit,
Non-completion cover,
and the non-completion cover,
well, both, it is.
So that deposit now can't be held till the end.
Correct.
It is regarded as first payment.
Yeah.
So if you're working on an NZCV contract,
the risk is you lose that protection.
Holding deposit against.
So I think Dan and I actually spoke. That was we talked about it on the phone because it sounds like there is a bit of discussion. So no, thanks for asking, Mark. Is that what? No, that wasn't it. No, that was it. Okay. Yeah. But yeah. So anyway.
We're now having discussions about.
So no. No, we had a lot of discussion about this and we talked about this last month. But yeah, we were very concerned about the deposit not being, held on till the end of the job because it is, I've talked to a lot of you about this, but it is, I think, it's a cash security basically for payment. And I think particularly we've got increased costs. It is really helpful because you've got other protections, but they're a lot more costly. So it's just nice to have that cash there. But yeah, ultimately it made sense because to be able to offer that, not that non-protection, that non-completion and deposit cover, which Masterbuild did cover, and Masterbuild doesn't have provision for that deposit anyway. So essentially that version of the contract just brings that almost in line with, not in line, but that part of the contract in line with Masterbuild. So it's not too different from that perspective. And so I think two things. One, if the client isn't taking out that deposit cover and that non-completion cover, make sure you use the original version of the contract because that still allows for the deposit. Secondly, and Dan and I were talking about, practical solutions to this. The contract still allows you the ability to ask for security for payment. So even if you don't have that deposit, and I'm talking about the certified contracts here, you can still talk to your owners or negotiate with them and say, hey, because what the clause currently says is if you have reason to believe that they are unwilling or unable to pay for any part of the build, then you can request security. So you can just take out, so you've got that deposit which you apply to your first invoice, but you can ask them for security, which you just treat in the same way. So you just hold on to it and it's sitting there as security till the end of the job anyway. So but that clause currently requires you to wait for the owner to, or for evidence that good reason to believe that the owner is unwilling or unable to make payment. So in the absence of that, you could just negotiate at the outset and say, hey, look, you know, we are going to need security regardless. So can we just strike out those words, you know, the unwilling and unable? So I think, yeah, if you do have reason to believe that they're unwilling or unable, you can request security at any point throughout the project. And that can be in the form of cash, so it would be treated in the same way. Otherwise, yeah, it would have to come to some sort of negotiation with them. So yeah.
And you have to get it in writing to talk from the client.
Yeah, definitely. Always in writing.
On practical terms, how does it actually sort of play out some stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a contract amendment at the end of the day. So yeah, in writing. If you just get the security pursuant to the current terms of the contract, which just say if you've got reason to believe that they're unwilling or unable to pay, then you don't need to change anything in writing. You can just put them on, send them a notice by email or whatever and say, hey, I'll need security for payment. I'll need it in this amount in cash. And you know, and if they don't provide you that security within 5 working days, you can suspend work. But that current clause is dependent on you being reasonably concerned that they are unwilling or unable to pay the contract price or any part of it. Yeah, if you don't.
You can only really negotiate that for the dog deposit at the front end, right, before you start, get all clear there. But I do tell my clients that I require deposit. The deposit goes into a separate account.
Yeah, so that's something else that Dan texted me about. So
The interest earned on that deposit
mm,
is theirs, right? But that deposit stays there until the
Yeah.
end of the job. And what we do, make clear to them on the last invoice in that contract that deposit are plus or minus, you know, what happens. And I don't seem to have too much trouble with it, although our deposits are reasonable, you know, but the latest job, we're looking to say something like $200,000 deposit.
yeah,
Well, then you've got to negotiate that at the front end.
Yeah.
It's got to be managed. That money's got to be managed very carefully. It's a lot of money, and the interest. And if you can get the agreement with the client, get it all signed up, that's it. And that's just
Yeah.
signed across the contract. That's it. That's where it stays.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
put it on the front end.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think absolutely, if you can do it at the front end, please do that. But that doesn't stop you from amending the contract throughout the project. And in fact, you can definitely amend a contract throughout the project in whatever way, as long as both of the parties agree and you've got proof of that agreement. So I hate it when it's an oral agreement to amend because you can't prove it. But so you know, but if it's in writing, that's always better. So you can, that's, you know, that is where partway through the project you can say, actually, guys, because of the changing climate, I'm going to need you to agree to this, but you can't force them to agree because yeah, exactly, it's because you've already got a contract, you've already got a binding contract, and that's why, yes, Peter says it's much better to do it at the outset because you've got everything agreed before you go in. And then your comments actually tie in quite well with Mark's next question. So you were saying about how you keep it in a separate account and you have that interest accruing, and actually also Dan's question from yesterday. So so Mark said, is escrow a safe option and can we have a list of providers? So I think if you're which is, yeah, basically your question. Yeah. So I think, okay, firstly, if you are keeping it in a separate account, the way Peter's just described, and you're, you know, accounting for it the way that he's done, that's actually fine. And I think that's a really good way of doing it. So what Dan and Mark have asked is whether or not you can have safe options for escrow. So whether it's a third party person. So Dan specifically asked about whether we do it. And the answer is yes, but we really don't like to because it is, I think, yeah, the way that you've described it is great. You hold on to it, they get the interest or whatever. But what we've done in the past, if we hold it, because if something goes wrong, then we obviously want to be able to freely act for our client. You know, we don't want to be conflicted out. So that makes it quite difficult. And so what we usually do is we have to prepare an escrow agreement, which sets out the terms that we hold it on. And it's always more complicated than we think, and that's why we don't like doing it. But yeah, so I think, and we even talked to Sean actually about holding some of the Halo, stuff on escrow, and yeah, it's just messy. But basically, the things that we have to consider if we hold it are, can we still be able to act for you? So we need to make that really clear in our escrow agreement. Secondly, when can we release that deposit? Because our trust account obligations mean we can't just hold on to it forever. We need to release it at some point. So we've had to think about, right, do we release it when the builder tells us to, which is our preference? So that's what we've usually put in. But again, you need to get the owner to agree to that, because they might not. And then there's what happens if we don't hear anything from either party for, a certain amount of time. Where do we pay the money to? So there's usually a lot of considerations. And I think, like I said, we want to make sure that it's clear that we act for our client and not for the owner. And so a lot of the time there's pushback on some of those clauses. But we need those clauses there so that there's no uncertainty about when we can pay out. Because Nevenka and I had a situation a few years ago now, I'm pretty sure it was you, where we had this arrangement, and it was a lawyer on the other side who was holding the money, and the terms were just not clear. And we were like, guys, we think you're supposed to pay out the money now. And I think, but the terms were so vague that it was actually quite hard to argue, and that's just the situation we can't be in. So yeah, so the short answer is yes, but we don't like to do it. So if your clients are happy for you to hold it in a separate account, accruing interest, and you let them know that they, pay out that interest, then that's great. Mark's asked about list of providers. I haven't, to be honest, I don't know any, I suppose, safe providers, shall we say, that aren't lawyers. Yeah, Sean's looked into them, and no, and I don't, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they didn't have the safeguards in place.
My research so far is like also my amateur sort of build it on. It's when you look at it, and working with Mr. Andy Burrows, the trades coach, looking at this too, being the business season, discussing with him, is that it seems so far is that your third party, like green light escrow used to be sort of stuff. It seems there's very, should we say, very limited protection.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why I sort of asked about the lawyer's trust account.
Yeah.
Because from what I can gather, correct me if I'm wrong, is you guys have a lot more
rules.
A lot more
rules. Yeah.
Which to me seems, it just sounds like obviously government stuff. At some stage you're going to have to look at this anyway, stuff with the whole third party and strengthen things up to make it.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think basically you if you want a safe option. So I think Andy has said build safe and I promise. I don't know, I haven't actually looked into either of those, but that is Andy's contributions. I don't know at all, so full disclaimer. I don't know how their trust regulations are or but yeah, Andy seems to think they're good, and someone has thumbs up it. So Mark, so that's 2 endorsements there. But yeah, I haven't looked into them, so I personally can't say with any confidence.
My memory, I thought in the last contract review as well, it was wording change, where a lot of people, the conception or the thought was that they had to retain the deposit in escrow, and it can't be used.
It can't be,
I thought there was policy wording or training recently that said you can use the deposit.
You can apply it to unpaid invoices in the event that they have defaulted. Yes. Yeah. So the way it works is, so in general, the starting point is you hold on to it till the end of the job. You don't use it on anything. And at the end of the job, you've got your final invoice and you apply it to that. And if there's anything left over or interest or whatever, you refund that to the client. That's the starting point. If at any point throughout the project, the owner defaults for whatever reason, at that point, you can apply the deposit to that defaulted portion. And that's why, to be honest, when I tell people how much of a deposit to ask for, I always say the amount that you think your largest invoice is going to be, not necessarily the final one, but your largest one. And that's because if halfway through the project, you have to suspend work and they haven't paid, you can apply that deposit to that unpaid invoice. And And then you can rely on that security clause to top it back up, is how I kind of see it. So so let's just say you have $100,000 deposit, you've used up $70,000 on an unpaid invoice, but you want to bring up that deposit back to 100. So then at that point you'd rely on that clause to say, look, I now have reason to believe that you're unwilling or unable to pay. So I'm going to require $70,000 of security to essentially top up my deposit. And if they don't within 5 working days, then you can suspend work. So so you can, if throughout the project for whatever reason that happens, you can then apply the deposit to that unpaid invoice. Yeah.
The going back to Nick there,
Yeah.
QSN.
Yeah. Question for you then.
Right, like what we're seeing is if I want to lay so many blocks, right? I can price so much per block, cement, this, that, and the other. If I do footings, I can work out the concrete, work out how long it's going to take to lay it. But from there on, it goes bloody crazy. You know, now there's so much damp pools you've got to put round the footing, underneath the footing, insulation, this, that. There's so many things that people over here, you cannot get skilled people or knowledgeable people, experienced people to do. And all the materials that's coming through, new products, new this, that, how can you possibly work out a price of how long it's going to take you to do that job? Because no one's ever done it before. It's all.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is not a question for me, ask Nick.
Can do is to give them an estimate, and that's it. You know, it's as long as it takes. If you don't believe me, just look how much the underground bloody tube station the Scott has got. Matches have virtually gone right nearly to a point of getting bankrupt because their QSs have underpriced because they've underestimated the job. And it's not their fault. They've never done it before. I a few years ago, I first time I used the QS, I said to this guy, can he QS this job I was doing? He said, yes, and I was trying to rush it through and get it in because the guy was pushing me as well. So I got the estimate. I said to the QS, I said, we're allowed. I said, we do quality work, therefore our rates should be correct. And he said, right, fair enough. And then we went in it and signed the contract, and away we went. And I missed the bricklaying.
Oh,
I looked at his price for bricklaying, and he's put down 75 cents a block, a brick. Right? And I worked it out.
yeah.
Geez, I called normal bricklayers. I said, what do you charge for a brick? They, $2.50, $2.50. I said, this guy has done 75 cents a block in labour for laying the brick. And I went after him. I went down to see his house, and I was a bit younger then, a bit more aggressive. I said, well, look, not right. And he said, well, I said, where did you get this price from? I said, I work for this buddy, YourQS, and for this this group builder. And he said, we get Chinese over and they lay the bricks. This is the price they charge.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll just give you the same rates. I said, no, you can't do that. I said, you should have gone what's good? I said, anyway, I said, I want my money back and all this business for what I paid him for doing the QS. Give him the money back, and he also give me his software sheet so I can do the QS in the future at no cost. But that's how I got caught out. I don't blame him because that's just the way it worked. But I noticed there's so many builders run into trouble because they're using materials no one's ever used before, and they've taken a guess on how long it takes to install. And they get called all the time. So it's a bit of a worry.
Yeah. I think
Show me where you got the skill base in New Zealand. You haven't got it. right? It's a new country. At best, you could say they've been building houses for about, I don't know, 100 years. So there's nothing more before that. It was just bloody backs, bloody roof, and
No, yeah, no, I'm laughing because it's true.
you got to say, you've got no skill backups. No, in the other countries, civilized countries, have been going for donkey's years. The trades have been given man and boy, passed off. So passed on. So you've got that base. Basic people who know common sense, they can do the job. But here, sometimes I ask the blokes to do things and they go, oh my God,
Yeah.
It's a worry. It's a worry for a builder who's got to pay for the end,
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for using good QSs, though, to be honest. And I'm obviously not a builder, so again, full disclaimer there. But yeah, I was talking to a client who said that after he changed QSs, that like he started making a profit. So I think his previous QSs weren't really pricing properly. So I think there is definitely something to be said for using, a good QS. Yeah.
I'm good bet.
No, I've heard from good authority that Nick's pretty good. So yeah.
Especially with them farmer copy. Especially on concept.
Yeah.
I actually say
about 10 copies.
the concept costing for a project and the client, the architect was actually complaining it was too much information.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you can't do change this or take this.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. Andy's made.
Can you answer for yourself, Nick? Can you answer for that? On the fact that you got materials that no one's ever fixed before, new stuff that comes in, an architect designs it to put it in the building. How do you price the labour content of that?
I'll answer that one. I think you've got to rely on subcontract quotes for that. Because most of the stuff is specialized product which needs a PS3, your guys won't load that. So you get a subcontract quote and you include that.
Yeah. I think Andy made a point which I'd made a bit earlier. He said it would be good to have a good formal communication system to set and maintain good communication habits, and I can't endorse that enough because I think a lot of disputes come from just a lack of communication. So I think that's really great, and I think having a formal communication system would be great because then you just keep them updated. So I think that's one thing. Mark made an interesting comment about your information, Paul. Mark said that he lost the job last week for exactly that. It was like the info was overwhelming, can't win. But to reply to that, Mark, I'd say it's better to have that, to be honest, because you don't want to have the flip side and not have enough information and then they sue you for being negligent in preparing your estimate, which is a lot worse. So you're much better off. I think the risk is greater to not have that information. So
it's a fine line to tread because I think clients, especially now, get choice overload.
They
get overloaded with information, and half of the stuff we provide them, Mark's probably the same in the quote, they've got no idea
what it is. Maybe
look at the bottom line.
Sometimes
at what you think they're probably gonna, especially then when you slap another contract in front of them, they're like, whoa.
I guess
so much information, it seems so, but you've got to do
it. You've got to do it. Maybe another option. I'm sure Nick he does already do this. I think I quite liked that. So that he had the two graphs, the pie chart with all of the information and then the simplified one. I guess that's one way to do it. Just be like, okay, this is the full breakdown, but these are the big categories, and then maybe that makes it a bit easier for them to digest. But I think having that information is good luck to someone saying you didn't take care of preparing your estimate. You've got all of that information. So
I would say just this new value stuff. My biggest
Ooh.
tip would say go on the tool sheet and do the online training course. So you can get the full rundown of how it works, the whole system. And personally, what I'm going to start doing is I think I've said this. I don't see it being a big issue with good past clients. They're probably going to come to me and say, "Listen, I don't need to pay $385 for this extra
loss of deposit non-completion coverage. We've worked together for years. I know you're legit. You're finding it'll be my take on this will be the new
clients,
a little bit nervous. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to look at as part of my disclosure statement, put some sort of financial stability information in there just to sort of appease them, you know what I mean? To readers I don't know. But I'll start doing that. And I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to say these are the reasons why. That's over to you, but this is why you don't even have to take out the policies. I'm not saying don't, but so the choice is in there for it, basically. So then we'll revert back to the old system or current system as well.
We've got both versions. I don't know if they've uploaded the new versions onto Toolshed yet. Have you had a look at Nevenka? Oh, it is. Oh, that's good.
How it works, so people online know, I think they've looked at it yet. Because obviously working on a contract with the past time, I don't know. You go on, you get down to the Halo section, you tick yes, client wants Halo, and then the next box is do they want to yes or no take out the new loss and deposit, non-completion cover. If they agree to that, you tick that box, and then it'll take you through to what I call the terms and conditions of the contract, of course. So you'll see the deposit information reflected in the under 6.2 clause. If you choose the more traditional one, we switch to the other terms and conditions, and it'll show you the usual. You can't use your deposit as cash flow. You have to put it in a neutral place and use it on last.
Or throughout.
It's really well. It's good.
Okay, that's good. Because that is what we discussed. That is what we discussed with certified, but I just haven't logged in yet to check. So
people online that are not aware. Is if your client is going to opt out, they have to opt.
They do. And
you also have to, which is a writable PDF form online.
Oh, great.
And
that's good.
And
you have to give that.
Your subcontractors as well. So buy those loose ends off, I suppose. And that's really good for you guys to make sure that you've given them that advice that they can take it. Couple more comments from Andy and Mark. So they're having a little chat here without us, So Andy says, knowing where your client is on a disc profile helps. I think you mean, and I don't remember what the letters stand for, but I think it's like, there's people who like either lots of detail or they just want the bold, like the main things. Is that what you're kind of talking about? So helping, and I think I agree. Like the people, I think I did it in a different way when I did the training. I think the blue people were the ones who wanted all the detail. The red people were the ones who were like, no, just give us the main things that I need to know, a bullet point. I don't want pages of stuff. I think yellow was like a bit fluffy. I can't actually remember. But anyway, so I think knowing what kind of things they want helps. And then he says you can adjust the detail level then. And then Mark says he had feedback from a client last week that, oh my gosh, that their preliminary services contract should be consolidated to 1 to 2 pages. And this was coming from engineer to the contract. No, that's interesting. I think honestly, the reason it's long is mostly just to cover everything, because we can definitely take things out, but it just means that if you've got a dispute over something, then you have to argue about it instead of it being in the contract. And if you have to argue about something, it's just more expensive. So yes, I think talking to Scott from BSO, that's his department. Technical adventure. So he was saying they're seeing a lot of cases coming through where builders members are going out themselves without talking to you guys, and I'll tell you McKegg first, just crossing out clauses and contracts and not realizing
what the impact they have.
So they end up finding themselves in a bit of a mix.
I obviously doesn't know that. Talk to us.
Talk to you first, see what I do, what are the
impacts.
What the impacts and stuff.
No, I think if people are making changes to your contract, please talk to someone about it. And if it's just a couple of changes, we could probably even deal with it on the help desk, but if it's quite substantive, then we would need to be engaged. Like I think a lot of the time we just have people calling saying, hey, they want to strike out the mortgage caveat clauses. I'm like, look, if that's all it is, then go for it. Like it's fine. Like there are other protections in the contract, and then I always say make sure you've got your deposit. So I guess guess maybe that's different now. But yeah, but then exactly in those instances, at least I could tell them, hey, you're using the version of the contract that doesn't have a deposit, so this is actually security. So this is the impact it has. Up to you, do what you want, but this is the impact that it has. So yeah, like I think yeah, Grania and I were actually recently dealing with, sorry guys, this is Grania and this is Tim. So yeah, but yeah, so yeah, Grania and I were dealing with yeah, a particular case where our client had lodged yeah, caveats on the titles to the property to protect their right to payment, and it was a large amount. It was about 800 and something thousand, and we were trying to race against a mortgagee sale, and I think race was the right word. That yeah, so there are options there, and I think, you know, particularly when it's a large debt like the one that we were dealing with, it's definitely worth having that protection, because if he, you know, he didn't have a deposit at all. So yeah, so it was definitely a case of us trying to race the mortgagee sale, see if we could try and, you know, purchase the property. At least we had the caveats on the titles to protect that right, which also meant, and because they were an equitable mortgagee, it also meant we had rights as against the primary mortgagee, because they have to exercise care to make sure they get the best possible price. And so it just brings on a whole load more extra, you know, rights. And so yes, I think if we don't have the deposit, that is probably something people will want to think about a bit more.
Yeah, so see from the other end, at the front end of the kind of contracts side of it, is sometimes it can look like you've lost a job, but in actual fact, because someone screwed you,
you didn't make money. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you can give away a lot to get somewhere that ends you up in a lot more mess.
Yeah.
So it's good to remember you necessarily lost an opportunity.
Yeah.
You may have just lost someone who could cause you a lot.
And I think that is a very pertinent reminder
Yeah.
of this market.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I would have said no to this client. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Need the work.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And it's a slippery slope.
It is,
Yeah.
it is. So you
Yeah.
have to be careful, because there's
Yeah.
even more people out there who
Yeah.
are actually a little bit more
Nefarious.
prepared to push.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I 100% agree, because I had a client call and it was on contract changes actually, but the changes he was talking about, I was like, you realize these are all really, really big red flags, right? He's like, yeah. And he was like, but you know, I need the work right now. I was like, yeah, but what's the point if you're not going to get paid? And I was like, you're just gonna, you know, I was like, you're just gonna end up in debt. Like, it literally got rid of everything, and it was like no variations were allowed, and if they were there, then the builder had to pay for the, I don't know, just all this like crazy shit. Yeah, like honestly, I was like, and I was like, yeah, you can say no. And I was like, but you realize these are red flags, right? You know, that you're not going to get paid. But yeah. And I was talking to another I think still a certified member, and he just doesn't use the contract. He never gets a deposit, doesn't use the contracts as they're supposed to be used, and he keeps telling us he never gets paid. And then I was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Peter.
Believes that paying deposits an insult of integrity. So.
Okay. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. Cool. But yeah, and I had the same, because he was like, oh, but like, you know, clients won't sign the contract if I ask for a deposit. I was like, it doesn't matter, you're not making any money anyway. So I was like, so I don't know, like, he's literally in debt for every single contract. And I was just like, so, and it's actually quite frustrating, because I'm like, why can't you just learn? Like, you know, once, okay, it's fine, you made a mistake, but when you keep doing it for every single project, like, you know, I was like, you're not making any money anyway. And I was like, so you might, like, I was like, what is the point of signing this contract thinking that you need the work, but you're not making money out of it, you're getting more into debt? Like, that's not a good business decision. But anyway, so yeah, so definitely, yeah. Yeah. Probably needs it. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm not sure if they're still a member, to be honest. Yeah, maybe not, because
Most of us are aware, I mean, unfortunately, that there's been a record number of construction and others.
But I think, yeah, in this case, yeah, it's the market, but it's also, he just had terrible business practice, you know, and like, because he started having problems before the market got, you know, crashed, and it's because he just didn't have good business practice. But yeah, anyway, sorry, rant over. But yeah. But yeah. Okay, well, if you guys don't have any further questions, I'll end this meeting, guys, and yeah, hopefully your leg gets better soon, Andy, and
Thank you.
yeah, oh, thank you for clapping. Okay, thanks. Okay, see you guys.